Daf Yomi, tractate Zevachim, page 38a, top of the page, with the words Ahasam Chad Kra, Kuli Gufei V'Chad L'Sachacha, Asa Hilchasa Ugrata, L'Shlishi Svelkamata Atefach. The Gemara answers there, one of the five indicated by the verse is needed entirely for the mitzvah itself, meaning to teach the basic halacha, that one must dwell in a sukkah. Another one of the five is needed to teach that a sukkah, as is indicated by its name, must have a covering. According schach, it says sachacha, which means schach. Accordingly, there are three left, alluding to the requirement that a sukkah must have three walls. The Gemara adds that the halacha transmitted to Moses from Sinai comes and reduces the size of the third wall, teaching that it need not be complete, and sets its minimum length at only 1 handbreadth. Shivim, Ahanikra, Vehani Vesaris, Arbaim Train by Lemesa. The Gemara raises yet another objection. If that is so, that both the vocalized and the consonantal texts are taken into account, consider the case of a woman who gives birth to a female child. Concerning this woman, the verse states that if she bear a female child, then she shall be impure 2 weeks, Shivu'ain, as in her menstruation, Leviticus 12, verse 5. The way that the word is written allows it to be read as Shivim, 70. Why not say that the vocalized text of the Torah, the vocalized text of the Torah is effective, teaching us that a woman is ritually impure for 14 days, and the consonantal text is also effective, teaching us that she is impure for 70 days, and therefore she should be required to sit in a state of ritual impurity for 42 days, which is the halfway point between 14 and 70 days. The Gemara answers there is different, and the consonantal text is disregarded entirely, as it is written, as in her menstruation. And a menstruating woman is impure for 1 week. Evidently, the verse is speaking in terms of weeks, and is not alluding to the number 70 at all. The Gemara further analyzes the opinion of Beit Hillel that even in the case of a sin offering, if the priest placed the blood on the altar with one placement, he facilitated atonement. And Eitana cites proof for this from here, as it was taught a Braita. The verse states with regard to the sin offering brought by a king, and the priest shall make atonement for him. Leviticus 4:26. And with regard to the goat brought as a sin offering by an ordinary person, and the priest shall make atonement for him, Leviticus 4:31. And with regard to the sheep brought as a sin offering by an ordinary person, and the priest shall make atonement for him, Leviticus 4:35. The repetition of this term is due to a logical inference. Shiachon v'halodim nemru damim lemata v'nemru damim lemala ma matan damim hamurim lemata shenetana rimatana chas kiper av damim hamurim lemala shenetana rimatana chas kiper. As one might have thought to say, could this not be derived through logical inference as follows? It is stated that blood is placed below the red line, and it is stated that blood is placed above the red line, just as with regard to the blood concerning which it is stated that it is placed below the red line. When the priest placed it on the altar, with one placement he facilitated atonement, so too. With regard to the blood concerning which it is stated that it is placed above the red line, when the priest placed it on the altar, with one placement he facilitated atonement. O klach zo, nevro damim bifnim, nevro damim bachutz. Ma damim amorim bifnim, chiser achas מן המתנוס, לא עשה ולא כלום, אף דמים אמורים החוץ, חיסר אחס מן המתנוס, לא עשה ולא כלום. Or perhaps go this way, turning away from the previous explanation and toward this explanation. It is stated that blood is presented on the inner altar, meaning with regard to a sin offering of the community or the high priest, the blood of these offerings is sprinkled on the incense altar that is inside the sanctuary, and it is stated that blood is presented on the external altar, meaning with regard to the sin offering of an ordinary person, which is offered on the outer altar that is in the courtyard, just as with regard to the blood concerning which it is stated that it is presented on the inner altar. If the priest omitted one of the placements, he has done nothing, meaning the offering is not valid. So too, with regard to the blood concerning which it is stated that it is presented on the external altar, if the priest omitted one of the placements, he has done nothing. נראה למי דומה דנין חוץ מחוץ, ואין דנין חוץ בפנים, או כלך בדרך זו דנין חטאת וקרנוס, וחטאת וקרנוס, יעל יחיה חוץ, שאין חטאת וקרנוס. The Gemara analyzes the two possibilities. Let us see to which of the two cases the blood of an animal's sin offering is more similar. It can be claimed we derive a halacha stated with regard to the external altar from a halacha stated with regard to the external altar, but we do not derive a halacha stated with regard to the external altar from a halacha stated with regard to the inner altar. Or, go this way, we derive a halacha stated with regard to a sin offering whose blood is to be placed on the four corners of the altar, from a halacha stated with regard to a sin offering whose blood is to be placed on the four corners of the altar. But a sin offering consisted of a bird, which is not a sin offering whose blood is to be placed on the four corners of the altar, cannot serve as proof to the halacha concerning an animal sin offering whose blood is to be placed on the four corners of the altar. Talmud lama v'chiper mipnei hadin v'chiper אף על פי שלא נשן אלא שלוש וחיבר אף על פי שלא נשן אלא שתיים וחיבר אף על פי שלא נשן אלא אחת. Since both of the above inferences are reasonable, neither can serve as the source of the halacha. Therefore the verse states, and the priest shall make atonement, and the priest shall make atonement, and the priest shall make atonement, for a total of 3 times. The verses are interpreted as follows. And the priest shall make atonement, even if he placed only 3 placements. Subsequently, and the priest shall make atonement, even if he placed only 2 placements, and then. And the priest shall make atonement, even if he placed only 1 placement. This interpretation is the source of Beit Hillel's opinion. The Gemara challenges, but each of these verses is necessary for itself to teach that atonement is achieved for each of the sins through its respective sin offering. Rava said, Bar Ada Mari explained this matter to me. The verse states with regard to each of these sin offerings, and the priest shall make atonement, and he shall be forgiven. Leviticus 4:26, 31, 35. This is atonement, and this is forgiveness. They are one and the same, since it would have sufficed to say, and he shall be forgiven. The superfluous mentions of the phrase, and the priest shall make atonement, serve to teach that the priest facilitates atonement even if he has not performed all of the placement. Gemara asks, but even if these phrases are superfluous, do they necessarily indicate that a priest who omitted placements has nevertheless facilitated atonement? Why not say that these phrases serve to teach that if the priest placed all the placements, he facilitated atonement, even if the placements were placed in the wrong place, and expound the verses as follows: and the priest shall make atonement, even if he placed the blood on the altar with only 3 placements of blood, on the corners of the altar, and one below, on the lower portion of the altar, and the priest shall make atonement, even if he placed the blood with only 2 placements above and 2 below, and the priest shall make atonement, even if he did not place the blood above at all, but only below. Amar Rava bar Yitzchak, im kein bital neteres avakaronos, ve'irach bar Amar lebatzelu. Rav Ada bar Yitzchak says, if so, that the priest facilitates atonement even if he placed all the placements below, you have abolished the requirement of 4 corners that is stated with regard to the sin offering. See example in Leviticus 4:34. As the 4 corners are on the upper portion of the altar, the Gemara is puzzled by Rav Ada bar Yitzchak's claim. But if the merciful one states that this is so, let this requirement be abolished. Amar Rava ezehu davar shetzarech shalosh, Havi Omer elu karanos. As Rav Ada bar Yitzchak's claim was rejected, Rava said there is a different reason why the previous claim cannot be accepted. What is the item that requires 3 repetitions of "and the priest shall make atonement"? Meaning, to what are these verses referring? You must say that these are the corners of the altar. The Torah must teach that the priest facilitates atonement even if he did not place the blood on 3 of the 4 corners. But in order for the verses to teach that all 4 placements can be placed below, the phrase "and the priest shall make atonement" would have to be written 4 times. The Gemara asks further, even so, it is possible to interpret the 3 repetitions of the phrase "and the priest shall make atonement" as referring to the location of the placements without abolishing the requirement of corners, as one can say "and the priest shall make atonement," even though he placed the blood on the altar with only 3 placements above and below, and 1 below, and the priest shall make atonement, even though he placed the blood with only 2 placements above and 2 below, and the priest shall make atonement, even though he placed the blood with only 1 placement above and 3 below. Lo matzinu damim shechatzion lamala v'chatzion lamata below. The Gemara answers, this entire line of inquiry can be rejected, as we do not find a case involving blood, half of which is placed above the red line and half of which is placed below it. One either places all the blood on the lower half of the altar, as in the case of most offerings, or all of it on the upper half of the altar, as in the case of sin offerings. The Gemara asks, and is there really no case of that sort? But did we learn in a Mishnah in Yoma 53b, the high priest took the blood of the bull into the Holy of Holies and sprinkled from the blood 1 time upward and then 7 times downward? Apparently, part of the blood of an offering can be sprinkled upward toward the upper part of the ark cover, and part can be placed downward toward the lower part of the ark cover. Kimatzliv, my kimatzliv, mechaver Rabbi Yehuda, kimenagdana. The Gemara rejects this. That is not a case where half the blood is sprinkled upward and half is sprinkled downward. Instead, that sprinkling was like a matzah leaf. The Gemara explains what is the meaning of like a matzah leaf. Yehuda demonstrated with his hand. It means like one who whips. Like one who whips another does not strike repeatedly in one place but directs one lash beneath the other. Okay. It's not exactly okay. He is on Tarosh, who is Be'ach. The Gemara further asks, and is there really no case of that sort? Didn't we learn in the Mishnah in Yom 58b about the Yom Kippur service after the high priest sprinkled the blood on the four corners of the incense altar? He sprinkled the blood 7 times on the taharo, the taharo of the altar. This concludes 38a.